This time I have a Sony DTC700. It's a Sony DAT recorder, obviously. And don't know what's wrong with this one, so let's fire it up and see what it's doing. Before I do that, though, I want to remove the top because I want to observe what's going on. This one arrived in a box that was totally trashed. I'm just looking at the cabinet here before I pull it apart. Looks like there's a bit of a ripple here, so and on this side over here I see the same thing. So I don't know whether we're going to find any internal damage. That's one of the reasons I'm going to open it before I do anything. I'll show you guys the corner of the box. As you can see, that's how the box arrived. So this thing has taken a tumble, so I don't know what to expect once I get the top off it. Gee, looking at this on the inside, it looks almost like a DTC75 ES. Very, very similar. The power supply looks to be the same. And the only big differences I can see between this and the 75 ES is, well, the 75 ES, they copper plated all of these metal parts, but it had a copper brace across the top here. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are other differences, but looking inside this thing, it looks very, very similar to a 75 ES, which I have two of. Let's see whether, first of all, this thing even powers on. The main reason I wanted to open it up is I was, you know, and I don't see any damage to the boards at this point. But with the cover being misaligned like that, there's always the concern that being dropped, you've got a power transformer that is actually mounted to the board. It's not, I don't think it's secured anywhere other than the board on this one. Yeah, it's secured to the board. I don't think it's even secured to the back of the unit. Oh, it is. It's secured to the bottom. So it's secured down to the bottom. So that would prevent it from, hopefully prevent it from damaging the board. Some brands, they just attach the transformer to the board and let the weight of the transformer be supported by the board. And in those cases, dropping them is not good because you end up with broken circuit boards. But what is this stuff that's in the bottom here? Is that rust? Looks like spots of rust on the bottom cover. This is the metal. This is a steel cover on the bottom. That looks like rust that's on there. So this unit may have been exposed to moisture over its life. Anyway, it turns on. That is a good sign. Let's see what this does. Cassette opens up okay. Well, that didn't sound good. It took a while for the tape to lace up, and then it unlaced and left the tape hanging out of the back of the cassette. It did not wind it away. Look at this. So we have a transport issue on this one. I just ate a tape. You can see the tape loop is sticking up here. The guide's retracted. So this one has a mechanical problem with the deck. So let's remove the eaten tape. Well, it did retract the tape in the end, but it certainly did not thread the tape up correctly. I'm just going to observe this again. See what it does. It looks like this guide on this side is not fully loading. We watch it go through its process again. It's going to stick about halfway. Watch. See, the guide's sticking. It should come all the way back to here. This other guide's gone up. It's trying to load it again, and it's going to go into shutdown. It's not going to remove, it's not going to unlace the tape, or it's not going to wind the tape into the cassette. When I push eject, though, it winds the tape back in. So something's jamming this guide. So this one here, we're going to pull this transport apart, take it out of the unit, and put it through its paces manually and just watch what it does. So let me get working on removing the transport. Incidentally, I think this is probably one of Sony's best transports that they made. It was used on the 700, the 680, which I also have a 680. It was also used on the DTC700 ES and probably a few other models. But this was what most consider to be one of the bulletproof transports. It really was built well. And doesn't normally give people a lot of problems. I actually have one right here. I think it's still here. Or maybe I put it in a box. I might have put it in a box with other crap. But I have a transport for one of these units. They came out of my 75 ES, which is a story how I got that one. So basically I was given a unit a year or so ago, I guess, that the drum was shot on it. Drum motor drive IC was shot, which is part of the drum, so the drum wouldn't spin. And anyway, did a video on the troubleshooting on the drum motor, showing the drum was not turning, and one of my viewers said, "Hey, I've got one of those transports from a unit I scrapped, and you know the transport's bagged, but maybe the drum's okay." So he sent me the transport that had other problems with it, and I was able to pull the drum motor off of the donor unit and put it onto mine and get myself another DTC700 ES, which made me relatively happy because they don't come along every day, and that was an expensive unit when it was new. I know because I bought one. So we're going to undo all the plugs, and then the transport should just lift right on out, just like that. Now I know someone's been in this before because one of the screws holding this down was black, and the rest of them were like a gold color or silver color. So gold color, I guess, in this case. Normally they have them held in place by 3 silver and a black, and the black screw is usually the one that's on this side, which is the grounding screw. These ones here are actually on plastic mounts, so it's not grounded, but then they have one screw that is screwed down into the chassis here, which grounds it. So it's a single point grounding is what it is. Even this bracket up here, as you can see, it's got an insulation washer on it. But that was done, I believe, to stop ground loops. So they had a single point ground. So the other screws, because if you have multiple screws screwed into the ground plate, you could have ground currents that were traveling around the unit. So they wanted a single point ground, and they did it this way. So here's the transport. The front loader is controlled by this motor over here, which raises and ejects the cassette. And then there's another loading motor which is turning, I think it's this one over here, that operates the mechanism. So I'm going to turn it by hand. I just want to observe what happens to these guides as it's trying to lace the tape. Is one of them sticking? And if so, what is it sticking on? See, now it's going up all the way. Almost like the tape itself was what was jamming. That is really, really strange. There's no resistance whatsoever on this now. I'll get some resistance now as I get into the pinch roller, because I have to load the spring. So if I just pull that by hand there, because I have to kind of hold the gear in place as I do it, because what will happen is when I release the gear, it will probably pull back, which it does. So I kind of have to hold the gear in place as I advance to get into the full load mode. And now we are fully loaded. Now this one does have a mode switch up here. The mode switches do get dirty, so it could be the mode switch is not working, or it could be the mode switch is broken. And it looks like, looking at this now, that that's what the problem is. Watch the top of the mode switch, it's not turning. Okay, mode switch here needs to turn. That's why it stopped and ejected. This mode switch is broken. There's going to be a gear on here that is snapped and split in two, more than likely. So we'll just run this back down to its unloaded position and then remove the mode switch. I bet you there's going to be a broken gear on the back side of that mode switch. Want to place your bets? Good thing I didn't drop that one on the floor. I never would have found it. Yeah, there it is. The gear is broken, you see? Split in two. It's normally like that. But that gear is cracked and split. That is a common problem on these, and it happened on mine. This gear breaks. I'll try to put the gear back together, and it may hold. I did that on mine. It breaks right where there's the two little holes in it, you see? Two little holes here, and for whatever reason it just cracks. It always breaks in the same place, right there. So what I did on mine, and mine has still worked to this day, is I just used my soldering iron to kind of fuse it together and fuse it down to the switch itself. And I say mine has been fine. I did mine probably 15 years ago. Mine was a white plastic gear of this type of plastic that always broke. This was the replacement type. If you look on this, probably this switch has been replaced. If you look at the gears here, they're all these white gears. And the gear on mine was white and it broke. I probably have another switch on that other transport as well, and I wonder if it's broken. So here's my old junk chassis with the mode switch on it. We'll undo it. Remagnetize my screwdriver here a bit. No, I won't be stealing the one off this one to fix a customer's deck, because I have 3 of these transports myself. So obviously I'm going to keep the spare parts for my own if it's ever needed, but even though I think you probably can. Oh, is this one cracked? No, it's not. I don't think. Or is it? Oh, this one's cracking too. So this one's showing signs that it's letting go. You can see right here that this one here is starting to go as well. So yeah, I won't be using this one. I'm going to hang on to this one myself, just because it's another one that I can fix. But I'll fix this other one. As I say, the one that broke on my 75 ES, I fixed it like 15 years ago, and touch wood, it's still holding up now. Mind you, I don't use the deck that often, so it might break again. It's not something that I use on a regular basis, but it's been used for the past 15 years and it hasn't broken again. So we'll get the mode switch ready for surgery here. I'm going to use my old soldering iron, this one. It's not an old one, it's a new one, but it's a cheap one. And we'll get this thing warming up, hot enough to melt this plastic back together, and we'll hopefully be able to keep it so that it won't break again by fusing it down to the actual switch itself. So that's probably stronger than it's ever been now. It won't come off. It's exactly how I did my own. I just kind of melted the plastic on the end and then just mashed it down with my finger while it was still molten and give myself a nice little burn. But this is probably now stronger than it ever was. There's really nothing to break on here now. Now we just need to clean it and time it. Clean it by spraying some cleaner down and through here, or just spinning it around will usually clean it off too. And then we just need to set the timing up and put it back together. So let me get this switch cleaned, and then we'll time it and throw it back in. Here is the procedure right out of the Sony service manual. And I might add that Sony actually did proper PDF manuals, unlike that ugly, where the hell is it? It's still here somewhere. Maybe I threw it in the garbage. That ugly Pioneer, where I was cutting pieces off and sticking them together with tape. At least with Sony, you can print them out and they'll all line up and print properly. Anyway, here's the procedure. Okay, so to align the rotary encoder, we're going to set the alignment point here. There's a little arrow and there's a line on here, and that line is right there, as you can see. And then we need to turn the mechanism to the point where the pinch roller just touches, as it says here. Turn the gear at the back of the chassis clockwise and stop at the point where the capstan shaft housing and pinch roller just make contact, as shown in figure B. So we're going to turn the loading motor and stop it right at the point where the capstan motor shaft and the pinch roller just make contact. We're going to then install, and that's what it will look like from the top view. We're then going to install the gear with the alignment like that and put it back together. I just looked up at the monitor and realized that my white balance was out. I don't know how that happened, because I normally keep the camera in one shot where I focus it on something white and set the white balance, and I leave it there. I never change it. But for some reason my camera decided it wanted to go back to auto white balance, and made everything look a bit, even when I use this light on here, see, it shouldn't go yellow, even though this is a different color temperature than my overhead lights. But it did, so I apologize for that. Anyway, the gear is in the correct timed position. We are now going to turn the motor and bring the transport into the fully loaded position. Just like this, to the point where, and I got to do this and hold it at the same time, where the pinch roller and the capstan shaft just touch. So we're going to bring this down, and I got to hold the gear in place while I do this, just to the point where they just make contact. And that's where I'm going to put the loading gear or the mode switch back in while I hold the transport in place, because if I let it go, it'll probably slip back, but maybe not. it's just about right there. Okay, so they're just touching, and I can't rotate it now because they're just making contact just at that point. So now if I let this go, it'll probably spring back. Yeah, it will. So you gotta kind of hold it in place. I'm up against a spring. You see, now it can spin. So I gotta hold it in place. There, okay. Now we're just making contact. I'll hold this in place and make sure that my gear is in the correct position, which it is. And now I can drop the switch back in and secure it with some screws. The gear's in place, so it's not going to slip alignment wise anyway. So now I can let go of this and run it back, and well, for that matter, I can now put the chassis back in and we can test it, and everything should work. Incidentally, the 55, the 75 ES, and the 700 are essentially the same unit. Service manual is the same for all three of those. 680 uses the same transport, but it's a little different as far as the actual circuitry goes. Go through all the modes and make sure that all the modes are operating correctly. When I fire it up, it should complete the unloading cycle, which it does. Okay. Open sesame. Done. This tape got damaged, so don't worry about the noise you hear. This tape has been eaten a few times, so this is just my garbage tape. We'll try another tape in it that's in a little better shape. Okay, another tape. That doesn't sound right. Oh, rewind's not working. Or it's very slow. So I may have to check the motors. Yeah, I may have to check the motor out. The tape supply and take-up motor may be needing some attention. So we'll pull the mechanism again, but at least we know that it now plays. So we're part of the way there. We got to service the bottom side of the mechanism because it is not rewinding with much torque. So it could be just the mechanism itself is gummed up. So one more time the mechanism comes out. Nice thing about these units is that they do unplug and come out pretty quick. Just pull out the cords. This one uses a direct drive motor that drives the take up and supply spools. So we want to make sure that this one's not gummed up. To get at it, it's kind of a pain because you have to remove the circuit board down here and unplug the drum motor and stuff, because there are screws that have to come out from under this to remove the mechanism. So we'll start by unplugging the drum motor. Undo this clip. All in an effort to take out as few things as possible, right? I needed to take those out because I needed to get to these screws on the bottom here to remove the real motor assembly, which is held in place with 3 screws. That one was loose, by the way. And then this assembly lifts out of the way. And now I can work on this system. See why this is sticking, why it's not rewinding very well. It looks like the brake pad is off on this. Yeah, this brake pad has come off on this one. You can see it here. That's supposed to be down like that. That's part of the problem. I have to glue that brake pad back in place unless it'll re-stick. It might re-stick. It's on there now, but it definitely had flipped up. That might have been what was causing it to stick. The brake pad was riding on top here and would have been sandwiched between the hub and the transport. That's probably what was causing it to stick. These brake pads feel okay on this side. The other two look okay as well. They're not falling off. Motor turns freely, so I don't think there's a problem with the motor. I think it was just sticking, and it was likely that brake pad that was causing it. So let's put the assembly back together. While I've got this open, I'm just going to make sure that other screws in here are tight and are not ready to come loose. Okay, I'll put the board back in. There, I think that's ready to go back. It's going to put the drum motor back in. After staring at this thing for quite a while, because it's still having a problem rewinding, it dawned on me what the problem is. Somebody's had this apart and they've lost a washer that fits under the, or on top of the tape spindle. As you can see here, if I give you a close-up shot, you'll notice on the supply side over here, if we get the light in there, you'll see that there's a washer sitting under the cut washer. On this side, that washer is missing. It's just the cut washer. And I think that's why it's having trouble on rewind, is that the washer is to provide a gap between the spinning tape spindle and the cut washer on top, which of course is fixed to the non-moving post. And this one here is missing that washer. Fortunately, I have another mechanism here, which, as we can see, just to prove that my theory is correct, we can see that on my spare chassis, which I have right here, there's a washer. You can see it, plain as day. There's a washer in between the cut washer on top and the tape hub. So somebody who serviced this in the past lost that washer. And that, I think, is why this one's having trouble rewinding. So I guess what I need to do is to steal the washer off my good spare mechanism and put it on this one. And fingers crossed, that's going to make this thing rewind properly. Let's just do that. Let's take this cut washer off the top here. Get my light in there so I can see what I'm doing. And cut washer comes off. And of course the top of the spindle lifts off. That's probably okay. That piece is just the cut washer and the little slip washer that goes underneath it. In fact, if I had a little slip washer that was big enough, I could just put one on there. But I don't know that I've got one. I know I've got one in the other chassis that will work for sure. There's a plastic piece that goes on top as well. There's a cut washer that goes underneath. You can see it here. I've got it off. Try not to lose it. Okay, there's a cut washer. Okay, there's two pieces, I guess. Yeah, there's one cut washer that goes on here, and then there's another one that goes above it. And this one here has got, yeah, there. So it's this it was this bottom cut washer that was missing. The bottom, I guess it's a slip washer, but it's got a cut in it. So this is the two washers here. So this is the lower washer. It's also a cut washer, and then there's the top one that fits on top that holds the mechanism in place. This provides the slip between one and the other. So I'm just going to put these out of the way so I can pull the chassis back in here. We'll throw those two washers on and see whether that solves my rewinding problem on this one. So I'll bring the deck back into position. We're going to push this down first. Is the one off mine in any better shape? It might be. I might as well just change the whole top just in case this is damaged. So since I'm in here. Besides, that's more parts I can charge for. This is a paid job, this one. Okay. Cut washer number 1 going over top. Try not to drop this. Cut washer number 1 goes on like that. And then cut washer number 2 goes over top of that to hold that one in place. And that goes on just like that. So there's the second washer on top. Now, will this thing rewind and fast forward properly? I guess we'll find out pretty quick. Open sesame. Still sounds like it's dragging a bit, doesn't it? What rewind? Well, this tape is a tape that's damaged and it seems to be rewinding. Okay, this tape's got a bunch of creases on it. And it should start about right about now. See, this tape's much quieter than the other one. This is only a little short tape, so it should stop any time now. There we go. That's the end of the tape. Well, the end of where the recordings are. Rewind it back to the beginning. Go back to this other tape. This longer tape. Might be okay. I think it might have just been that washer was see, this is just a noisy tape. I'll try a few more tapes in here and just see how it works, but it certainly is sounding a lot better now. The other option is I could have put this motor here in, but I don't think that's going to make a difference. I think it's just, a lot of this is just the tapes themselves. These are so old, these tapes. I'll grab another tape and see how it performs. There are only certain tapes that I run in machines other than my own. This one's not even full, this tape. This is a computer tape. This is the equivalent of a 2-hour tape. Errors. It's because it's worn out. That looks to be moving along at a pretty good clip. As you can see, if I adjust the light, you can see how fast that tape is moving. It's trucking along pretty good. Now, I say this tape's not fully full. This one will stop about 3/4 of the way in because that's where the recording ended. There we go. That's the end of the recording. It'll cue it right up, and then it'll go back. I'm just watching absolute counter as it's going down. The speed on these is controlled, right, by the servo, so it winds at a certain speed, and it'll change its speed as it gets closer to the beginning. It will slow down that way. You don't have to worry about the tapes running off the end of their spool and breaking. And we're down to the last 10 minutes now, so in that last few minutes, they slow right down. 3, 2, 1, 0, stop. Right about now. There you go. I think this one's okay. Put the mechanism back in the transformer in the deck itself, and we'll test it. Before I reassemble this one, I'm going to pull the preamp out and just take a look at the capacitors on the preamp, because they are known issues on these decks. We'll just take a look and see whether they're leaking, or whether they've been replaced, or whether the ESR is going up. And take care of that at the same time while it's in, if they are bad. So the preamp comes out. I have to open up the shield, so just unsolder the grounds from it. And if we look down at the board, we see that definitely there are 2 capacitors in here that do need to be replaced. You can see that they are leaking onto the board. They're both 22 microfarad 6 volt, 6.3 volt. So let me find a couple of 22s and we'll just change them out while I've got this in service, so that this DAT recorder will last for many more years. So we'll remove these with the standard cut and pull method. I find that this is usually the safest way to remove these little buggers, because we don't want to put any undue stress onto the board itself. So I cut the top off, and then I can carefully remove the rubber plug that's already been leaking and break away the plastic while holding it in place, so that I'm not going to put any stress onto the circuit board itself. And it leaves me with the 2 pins with the crud on the board there. Negative was on this side here, and the other one here, negative, is over here. It's outlined. The flat side is where the negative go, but you can see the crap that's been leaking out of the actual capacitor itself, which is corrosive. That's not good for the board. So one of the ways that these things fail is from the crap that leaks out, the electrolytic, which is, say, slightly caustic. So we'll just apply some solder here to kind of clean up the board. We do this and it'll help me remove the old piece, like that. And the pads look to be okay on here. There, that one should be good. Do the same for the other one. Get the other one out of here. Alright, back on this one. I got interrupted by a phone call there. It was actually a phone call that was actually for me, which is quite amazing, because usually when the phone rings, it's not for me. I generally tend to get more emails and text messages than actual phone calls, especially on the home phone. It's almost unheard of. My wife uses it all the time. That's why I still have a home phone. Well, I have it for a couple of reasons. One, because if you need an emergency, if you need fire or ambulance or whatever in an emergency, it is the fastest way to get help. going to probably hear from people telling me that your cell phone will get you help just as quick, but that's not true, because your cell phone, they don't know your location. They have an approximate location, but they don't know your exact location. And anybody that says different doesn't know what they're talking about. They have an approximate location, and usually they will know, but it depends on where your phone last saw a GPS signal. And I know this because even some of these so-called emergency pendants that seniors will wear when they're out walking around and stuff, well, if they're outside in the open, sure, no problem. But if they're in their house, well, sometimes it doesn't show them in their house. Sometimes it shows where they last were detected by the network, which could be in front of their house, it could be next door. You got a landline, whether it's copper or whether it or VoIP fiber that's registered to your address. But if you have a landline, they know exactly where you are. There's no looking up, there's no pinging cell phones. An annoying lawnmower is running now. Thank you. Anyway, the call was from a fellow that brought me, I don't know if you've ever seen that projector, that film projector with the bad belt a few weeks back. And I showed off my little brownie Kodak. And so he's got the little Kodak for me to do some transfers on his camera of some films, and he blew the bulb. So he went and got a new bulb. But the thing is, it's the bayonet base, but it's a different type of base. So he's going to send me a picture of it. I think they sold him the wrong bulb at the camera store. The camera store was probably like, holy smoke, someone's actually buying a projector bulb. Guy was probably wetting his pants. He was so excited to sell a bulb for a 1955 projector. The problem is it wasn't the right bulb. Gotta figure out where to put this one. I'll probably have to put this one in a bit of an angle here. So we'll mount it in more like this. I'll just cut one of the leads a little shorter so that I can mount this thing at an angle so that the cover will go back on it. There's a reason I'm not putting SMD caps in here. They failed the first time. Why would I subject someone to that again? These ones will never go bad. At least they should never go bad. There we go. 2 new 22 microfarad caps. Now I can put the little board back into its shield cover here. Slides in just like that. And then the 4 tabs to hold the board in place and provide grounding in 4 different spots. Gee, it's a really nice day out today here. They were calling for a summer storm, believe it or not, but it didn't hit us. it bypassed us. A little bit windy yesterday, but nothing really other than wind and a little bit of rain. But it's sure nice out today. I'm tempted to get my bike out, and I don't mean my motorcycle. It's not on the road yet. You know, my good old pedal bike. I got a nice little electric assist e-bike that I've had for a long time. I just picked up a couple new batteries for it. It takes these the big gel cells, 10 amp gel cells. So I picked a couple of them up, and I'm going to put those in. And see how it runs. The old batteries have been in it for, well, since it was new, and they just don't hold a charge anymore because, well, that's how lead acid batteries get after a while. They just get to the point where they don't want to charge. Of course, you know at this point it's not going to work because I'm putting all the screws back in, right? That's Murphy's Law. To get it all back together, it's not going to work. Worked fine when you've got it all apart on the bench on your test. Throw it back together, and it don't work. Isn't that usually the way it happens? Let's see here. Let's just grab a tape that I know I can get away with. Music Bakery. And this one here is the one that's got some damage to it, I think. And it should start playing right about now. It's working! Excellent! That's a dropout. Now that's a dropout on the tape because this tape's been chewed up more than once. But I just want to see the fast forward and the rewind work like it's supposed to. There we go. Third track, fourth track. Let's cue it to the fourth track. There's only 4 tracks on here. Back to track 3. Yep, damaged tape. Know all about it. Okay, rewind the tape back to the beginning. I'm just going to run my my other tapes. I'm going to run through here for a bit. Just test them out, make sure everything's working, and then we'll finish this one off. These are loud. They have gear drive, right? Gear drive for the loading and unloading, so they are quite loud. Okay, can't let this play, but it's just for testing the rewind and fast forward, making sure that it's going to fast forward and rewind okay. Put that cover on. Load this tape up. This is the one that's really noisy. And again, I can't play this one because it's got copyright music, so we'll have to cut the camera off here. But again, fast forwarding okay. Looks like we're okay on this one. Okay, I think we're going to close this one off now. This one's fixed. You don't need to see me put the top cover on it. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you again in the next one real soon. Bye.